Hey guys, if you're shopping for knives and gear, make sure you check out the description of the video you're watching right now for links to some great online retailers. There's also individual links for knives that I personally recommend. Thanks! What's going on YouTube? Metal Complex here, and today I've got another interesting knife review slash knife overview to share with you guys. This is the CRKT Tuna, but it's in S35VN and titanium. So this is a limited edition version of the knife, and I'll let you guys know right now this version of the knife is no longer available. You can get the standard D2 variant of this knife, which is not any of the retailers that I've usually linked down below. I don't believe at the time of this video have it in stock, but I will still link it so you guys can go look at it if you want to. I think you might be able to get it in other places. This is a really interesting knife. I've said multiple times here recently that CRKT, or Columbia River Knife and Tool, has really started to impress me. They were never in a realm of, it wasn't quite like my feelings on Gerber, right? CRKT was always, okay, you know, and then every now and then they come out with a model where I'm like, wow, this is really interesting. This is definitely one of the better ones that I have handled. I'm going to talk all about it here. This knife was sent to me by @Leith_Blades on Instagram. Please give him a follow. It's because of people like him that I'm able to bring you guys daily knife content. It's also because of my generous patrons. Thank you so much for supporting me. If you'd like to get your hands on some of these cool stickers and some other benefits, there's of course a link down in the description. Your support would mean the world to me. Let's go ahead and get a measurement of this guy. Overall length of the CRKT Tuna, which by the way is a Lucas Burnley design. He's got a bunch of stuff out there, but like the CRKT Squid and the Quaken, through, I think it's Boker Quaken, he did that. There's a whole bunch of stuff. Not specifically going to focus on Lucas Burnley, but that is definitely a big name in the knife world. Overall length coming in at 7 3/4 inches if you count the very back of that lanyard loop there. Blade length is coming in at about, we'll call it 3.3. Cutting edge is coming in at exactly 3 1/4. How about some size comparisons up against the Ontario Rat Model 1? Rat 1 is coming in at 8.6 inches overall. So you can see there, it's not a huge knife, but it's not a small knife either. How about up against the Spyderco PM2? Spyderco PM2 coming in at 8.3 inches overall. How about up against the Benchmade Reptilian, or in this case, the Ritter Hogue? Ritter Hogue is coming in at 8 inches overall. And last but not least, we have the Spyderco Para 3. Spyderco Para 3 is coming in at 7 1/4 inches overall. How's the action on this guy? It's running on bearings. You can see right there the little bearing symbol, and it is a thumb stud opener. Now, it's not completely false shut, but let me tell you, the action is perfectly acceptable for what they wanted for this knife, which we'll talk about. Again, it's trivial at this point because these were limited to 250 pieces, and they are gone. Yeah, you know, actually the action's pretty good. It takes just a little bit of a wiggle to get it down there. I can do the reverse flick, I can do the regular thumb flick, and there's no excessive jimping anywhere or anything on the knife that would make it uncomfortable to deploy or essentially disengage and put away. The blade does get pretty, you know, basically where I want to put my finger is right behind that little nub right there to disengage it, and that the starting part of the blade just barely clips my fingernail. I wouldn't necessarily consider that a problem though. It's just something to be aware of if you do decide to go after the basic version of this knife. But yeah, actually, it's pretty fun to deploy. Honestly, the thumb studs are nice and easy to engage. That's just a perfect thumb stud, right? Not sticking out really, I mean, maybe just a little bit past. They don't need to be quite that big, but they're definitely easy to engage. I fear that if they were smaller, it might actually make it more difficult to engage. But yeah, pretty happy with that. Let's go ahead and do the hardware check. Get out my handy dandy WIA bit selector and WIA magnetic driver, 2 items that are very inexpensive and very recommendable. You can find them down in the Amazon store that I reference at the beginning of every video. Just pull up in the store and look for knife maintenance. Darn it, I slid these over. They're labeled now, but I slid them over. Okay, so I'm going to guess, like other CRKTs, we're looking at T8 for the pivot. And that is the case. And then probably for the inlay screws and everything else, we're likely looking at T6. So let's go ahead and grab that out there real quick. There we go. And so body screws back here, yeah, that's T6, and inlay screws, Yeah, T6. Okay, not that big of a deal. You do have quite a few T6 screws. You guys know my feelings on T6. I don't like them. They're easy to strip. I'd rather everything is T8. Not a deal breaker. Let's go ahead and talk about carry profile. So thickness up against the Spyderco Para 3. We're actually coming in a little teeny tiny bit thinner, but you know, you do have to count the excess. There's a slight excess in thickness caused by, you know, the thumb studs, which is, I mean, even though it's only that one specific part of the knife, in and out of the pants, you might feel that just a little bit. I mean, it's worth pointing out. I still don't think it's that big of a deal. How about carry profile up against the Spyderco PM2 and Para 3, two knives that have awkward carry profiles nobody ever seems to complain about. You can see their overall length of the handle is pretty similar to the Para 3. It's definitely shorter than the PM2. And in terms of height this way, it's definitely not as tall as either of them. So that's nice. This is actually a nice carry profile. I don't have an issue with that at all. You get a measurement of blade stock thickness here real quick. I don't think we're coming in at anything, you know, substantial here. Well, it is actually a little thicker than I thought. Let's go one more time. Blade stock thickness coming in at, oh boy, almost 150 thousandths. Let me put it up against the Spyderco PM2, which I believe is 140 or so. Yeah, so it is actually a little bit thicker than I thought. It might not need to be that thick, but again, it's not really that big of a deal. So we are looking at, this is actually TC4 titanium, looking at CRKT's website, and it's unmilled. TC4 is the Chinese equivalent to 6AL4B, which I have learned to just let go of. I used to think that TC4 was a lesser grade of titanium. From what I understand, it is not. It is essentially the same thing. You know, 7 3/4 inches, 145 to 150 thousandths on the blade stock, unmilled titanium. Whoop. let's try ounces. That might be a little bit more helpful. There we go. Okay, 3.88 ounces. I don't have a problem with that at all. It's over that ounce and inch mark. You know, if you carry the Para 3 lightweight or Benchmade bug out, it might be a little bit too heavy for you, but I think the overall carry profile and size is one that I can definitely handle, right? So if you're wearing athletic shorts, something lightweight, not going to be your thing. If you're wearing regular pants or you generally carry a knife of this size, you're not going to have any issue with it whatsoever. In fact, it's going to be, I think, easier to carry than most knives, you know, around this size. All right, so did we cover everything? I think we did. Let's go ahead and take a look at the anatomy here. So we have tumbled titanium. We have a nice, in this case, this is part of the special edition. It looks like an aluminum pivot collar. Blacked out hardware. You have a G10 inlay that has been intentionally raised just a little bit. You can see it's raised ever so slightly above the titanium. The inlay looks really nice. They set that in there perfectly. Backspacer is also green. Looks a little bit cheap. Honestly, it looks like the material that essentially like if you pick up a bonus aluminum bottle opener from, you know, like a hardware store or something. That's kind of what it looks like to me. It's a little bit kind of overly reflective. I mean, it's a piece of aluminum. I think I would have preferred something a little bit more matte, but again, I mean, it is what it is. It's the material that it is. It just has this appearance to me on the back that it just kind of looks like this sparkly kind of inexpensive thing that could, you know, might have otherwise been made into a bottle opener, but that's okay. It adds some flair to it, right? The combination of the black, the tumbled titanium, and the green. I think it would have been cool to see some other variants, right? Or just in those areas make it, you know, black aluminum or, you know, different colors or anything like that. You know, I imagine if this knife was like unbelievably, you know, if it was something they plan to continue to do, then they probably would offer different colors. I have no idea if they plan to do this again. The lime green thing isn't really my cup of tea, but for some people it might really catch your eye. All these areas around the outside have been nicely chamfered down. Everything is nice and smooth outside of the edges of this lanyard hole, which are a tad angular, but not often are you going to be interacting with that area. I have to emphasize how much fun this is to do the reverse. It is so comfortable and so natural to do the reverse flick. And at the same time, you know, the standard flick is really, really easy, and just wheeling it out. I mean, this is really easy to manipulate. It's very comfortable. It's very fun to kind of mess around with. And I like that. So if you're a fidgety person, that's great. If you're somebody who just uses their tools and is only concerned with how easy it is to basically deploy and use, yeah, everybody's going to be happy there. That's great. The blade is S35VN. You can see there this is actually numbered number 77 of 250. It says Burnley design, CPM S35VN, has a number down here in the IKBS. You know, the CRKT, then I guess the numbered is kind of nice because it is a numbered knife. Tuna and S35VN, you know, I get that's all the more I like to see all the other stuff on there. I think CRKT sometimes puts too much on their blades, but again, that's not a functional defect or anything like that, so it's just personal preference. The blade is nice. It's a drop point blade, black washed, I guess, drop point blade with the the flat that runs out about, I don't know, 70% or so the length of the blade, 65%, carrying some pretty meaningful thickness out to the tip. This is definitely a robust blade. It does drop down to an edge that is sharp and ready to cut. It is a little bit thick on the edge. That's never really stopped me. I mean, you know, if I do notice a difference in stuff that I regularly cut daily, it's pretty, like, it's not like, oh man, this is like substantially harder, right? This is still in the realm of just fine for EDC. The blade is ground correctly. It is definitely sharp. I'm going to assume that CRKT does their heat treatments correctly on S35VN, but I honestly don't know because I don't have the equipment to test that. I think it's nice that it is S35VN. That really shocked me from CRKT. That is not a steel that I'm used to seeing them use, but I think it's beneficial for a lot of these companies who have not really tiptoed super far into the enthusiast part of the knife world. I think it's really smart that they're experimenting with stuff like this and, you know, working with people like Lucas Burnley to bring these excellent designs to the table in materials that are really, really great. I mean, yeah, that's really cool. I hope that we see more stuff like that from CRKT. If you're wondering, you know, truthfully, I couldn't find anything definitive online because there's not a lot of information about this special edition of the knife, which is part of the reason why I wanted to review it. I'm going to assume, given the fact that, you know, just based on where CRKT generally manufactures their knives and the fact that we've got TC4 titanium in this guy, and given the price, I'm going to guess it's made in China. I'm about 99.9% sure. The blade looks great. There are no extra or excess sharp edges anywhere except for the cutting edge. The cutting edge feels nice. The tip feels good. I mean, everything's even. There's nothing wonky or awkward here. I mean, everything is just really nice and ready to go. And it's a straightforward blade. Those thumb studs, I think they're actually fairly in the cutting path. Let me use Hunter's card here and I can show you guys. There's a little more than a 1/4 inch, you know, maybe more like 1/3 of an inch of the blade that is actually in, you know, or the thumb stud is in the cutting path of. And so, you know, the design is one that just yields that. I mean, they positioned the thumb stud in a way that it's really, really easy to engage. They probably could have moved it back just a little bit to save you some of that edge, and it still would have been plenty easy to engage. Whoops, messed that up. It's not that big of a deal. The cutting, I mean, like if you're cutting diagonally, then it's not going to catch it. It's only when you're cutting straight down. Still, though, I don't always like to see that. It's not really that big of a deal. Big fan of that peel ply texture G10 inlay. I think it looks nice. I like that they raised it just a little bit. Some people are going to like how it looks. Some people aren't. Ergonomically, this knife doesn't have a whole lot of lines that are really locking you in. It's just sort of this curvature and this suggestion of where to lay your fingers. It is fairly comfortable. I'm a little bit condensed. I'm kind of torn between putting my pinky down here and trying to cram it in there. I wear an XL size glove, so that means my hands are basically perfectly average. It doesn't mean that they're large at all. So I feel like that's the experience most people are going to have. There aren't any hot spots, though. You know, it's just the fact that I'm trying to decide exactly where to put my pinky. But it is very comfortable, and I feel very locked in for the most part. There's a little bit of jumping back here. It's not really catching my finger too much. I kind of wish that it was up here, but again, that's not really that big of a deal. What was the main point that I was trying to make there? Oh, yeah. Well, the texturing on that G10 inlay, which is really just on one side, kind of adds a little bit of extra grippage where, you know, it's otherwise lacking. So that's kind of nice. I appreciate the look. It's simple, but it's also got a lot going on, and everything's in the right place. Nothing looks out of place, right? It may not be a design where the colors, you know, speak to me, you know, specifically, but all the lines and, you know, the little areas right here, they've made these cutouts and how they laid the G10 in. It makes sense. Like, the look of this knife all makes sense to me. You got a couple body screws back here, and you have a slot there so that you can mount the pocket clip for left-handed carry. Tip up only, which is fine. Some people really don't like these slots. I don't care. I kind of like that the pocket clip is nested into the titanium because it means it's not going to move. But I can understand, if you consider that kind of an eyesore, some people do. There is a lanyard loop up here. So if you really like lanyards, great. Unfortunately, it is being prioritized over the pocket clip, which isn't necessarily something that it's definitely not something I like to see. However, this is a pretty deep carry pocket knife. So with only that much of the knife sticking out, I just don't really have a problem with that. I mean, I would just prefer that it wasn't there, that they just rounded this off and made it a continuous backspacer, and then it really would have carried deep, right? Because I'm not going to use a lanyard, and I know it's like less than 10% of people actually attach lanyards to their knives anymore. Whatever. This pocket clip is wonderful. This is a wonderful pocket clip. Deep carry, has the swoop that I like, easy to get in and over the pants because it's on top of smooth titanium. We've got recessed screws. One of those actually looks to be maybe like it's trying to back out there a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and actually on camera, I'm going to tighten that back down. Let me find the right head here real quick. That's not something that is indicative of a flaw or a structural defect or anything like that. It's just a screw that needs to go down just a little bit, and there we go. Yeah, the pocket clip is just great. I really, really like this pocket clip. That's wonderful. I don't think it's anything special. There's plenty of tension on there. It's going to function. It's going to make it easy, and it's not a hot spot, in my opinion. Other side has a head. I don't know that it's free spinning, but if it is, you're going to need 2 drivers. That kind of stinks, but hey, for all I know, it may not be free spinning. I didn't take this knife apart, but it's one of 2 things. It's either free spinning, right? You got to use the 2 drivers, or it's not. You got to use 1. Just by making a quick adjustment on this to see how tight the tolerances were before I started the video, it didn't feel like the other side wanted to spin. So it might be set up in a way where, the pivot is free, or it's not captive, but tension is actually keeping one side from turning while you turn the other side. So that's at least good. It does have a steel lock bar insert, which is, again, something that I don't expect from CRKT. This is a titanium lock bar. It does act as the over travel stop, which is nice. And then lockup on this guy is solid. It's solid, guys. I'm really impressed with that. You can see there we've got perfect centering right there, right down the middle. Engaging at 25 to 30%, something like that. This is great. Very, very cool. So these knives originally sold for, looking at CRKT's website, they were $185. So you're looking at $185 for a knife that is manufactured likely in China. TC4 titanium, G10 inlay, some aluminum around the pivot collar, some aluminum back here. Bearings, S35VN, designed by Lucas Burnley. This is a cool looking knife, and it's out of the realm of normal, in my opinion, for what I expect from CRKT. It is definitely high quality, it is definitely well made, and it is definitely a good tool. Absolutely. The $185 price tag didn't necessarily blow me away, but that's trivial because you can't get these anymore, right? So there was probably a little bit of a bump, because it's a special edition. If this were a production knife, if this were made continuously, I would really like to see it more. Like you're competing with Kaiser here. In this titanium and S35VN on bearings, right? They do a lot of thumb stud openers that are on bearings. They do the full titanium, right? Every now and then they do some inlay stuff. The Kaiser Odin is coming in at about $185, $190, and truthfully, I was much more impressed with that knife and the overall. That was a carbon fiber inlay, and everything all the way around looked a little less, I don't want to say clunky, it just looked a little bit more finished, and that's not to say that this isn't finished, right? Just trying to compare with other things that are, standard production knives that are in the same ballpark, manufactured in the same area with the same materials, right, or in the same country. So to me, this is, if it was a production knife and they had it at like 150 to 160, I'd be like, heck yeah, that's great. I can recommend it all day. 185 wasn't a bad price. It just wasn't anything impressive. But again, it doesn't really matter because you can't get this version of it anymore. I have not handled the standard version of this knife, which it comes in D2. I'm going to assume that they applied, hopefully some of the same attention to fit and finish and things like that. You're looking at lesser materials, but I'll tell you this, what I can definitely apply in terms of this review to the other version is that the overall profile is wonderful and it's very easy to deploy with a thumb stud. So that may be reason alone, for some people to pick that up. And I believe that knife comes in at between $45 and $50, which wouldn't be a bad price. this is interesting. It makes me happy to see CRKT doing this because every now and then that, you know, like I've never looked at CRKT and thought, oh, I don't want to buy anything from them. No, I'm always curious. That's how I feel about CRKT right now. What are you guys doing? What are you guys making? Who are you guys working with? I'm interested. It's neat to see them, you know, continue to push into this enthusiast knife market. I mean, they're going to continue to make, you know, their overly tactical stuff. You know, there's stuff that's geared towards the hunting and fishing community, which is fine. They're going to continue to make their budget stuff, right? They're going to probably continue to do that and hopefully continue to tiptoe with stuff like this. That'd be cool. So anyways, guys, I think that's pretty much all I can say about this. I mean, if you decide to go after this, I definitely wouldn't pay more than 185 bucks or so. But I mean, if you can pick this up for 150, 160 or so on the secondary market, I'd say it's absolutely worth it. This is super cool, fun to play with, and definitely an excellent tool. I think that's going to be pretty much it, guys. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like. If you'd like to check out my other content, I do, of course, have lots of videos of knives that are either expensive or inexpensive that I do or don't like. So check those out. And if you enjoy all my content, go ahead and click on that metal complex logo right there and subscribe because there's definitely more coming. Thanks again for watching, everybody, and have a great day.